To that point, with your economic experience as a former governor of two central banks, why not present Canadians with a budget at the very first opportunity?
Well, this is in fact based on my economic experience. There is not much value in my judgment, and it's considered judgment, and it's judgment based on experience, that there is not much value in trying to rush through a budget in a very narrow window, 3 weeks, with a new cabinet, effectively a new finance minister, just reappointed, but a new finance minister, rush that through, for example, in advance of the NATO summit, which happens after Parliament rises. So the NATO summit, 23rd, 24th, that is going to be a very important event for the security of Canada, but also it will have fiscal implications. It will have budgetary implications.
Mark Carney's always giving answers like that. They don't answer a thing. Let's have MP Michael Cooper from Alberta. He's a cowboy. Giddy up. Give his take on why Mark Carney doesn't give any straight answers about a budget. He's supposed to be a banker. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Mark Carney is not being honest with Canadians about his massive deficit spending plans. Using carefully crafted language, Carney is trying to create the illusion that he has a plan to balance the budget. Take the recent speech from the throne, where Carney's government committed to balancing the operating budget within 3 years.
The government will balance its operating budget over the next 3 years by cutting waste, capping the public service.
Carney plans to hide this massive new deficit spending by making the federal budget more complicated and less transparent. He plans to create two budgets, an operating budget and a capital budget. The operating budget would cover day-to-day government spending, while the capital budget would cover so-called investment. Here's the problem. Carney's definition of capital spending is completely vague. It's not limited to actual capital spending, things like investing in infrastructure. It also includes so-called incentives that support the formation of private sector capital or which meaningfully raise private sector productivity. In other words, Carney's definition of capital spending includes government handouts, corporate welfare, no doubt to benefit liberal insiders. This elastic definition of capital spending allows Carney to balance the operating budget, not by balancing anything, but by shifting spending to the capital budget. Carney has no real plan to reduce spending, no real plan to balance the budget. Carney's real plan is to rack up more debt than Justin Trudeau while making it more difficult to track government spending. Not surprisingly, this important detail was completely left out of the speech from the throne. Let's call this for what it is. It's called budget trickery. It's called cooking the books.
Michael Cooper must be onto something there. What is he hiding? Mike Barrett, another MP from the Conservative Party. This guy's from Ontario. Let's take a look and a listen. Carney might have a lot to hide.
The Prime Minister has an entire department of bureaucrats trying to manage his conflicts of interest, but they can't even tell us if the Prime Minister has set up a conflict of interest screen. And so that means that the former chairman of a multi-billion-dollar investment firm is sitting at the cabinet table and could be taking decisions that personally improve his financial standing. He's been Prime Minister for 100 days, but he's still jumping through these ethical loopholes. So why won't the Prime Minister stop hiding the truth from Canadians and come clean? What are your conflicts of interest?
I would just remind the member to direct his question through the chair. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unlike the member opposite, I'm proud of having experience in the private sector. I'm proud of having experience helping to build this country. I'm proud of having filed all my requirements in advance before required, including a screen for the conflict of interest. I wait on these.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, unlike the Right Honourable Prime Minister, I'm proud to have served our country in the Canadian Armed Forces in uniform. This Prime Minister seems to do whatever he thinks thinks he can get away with. He voted for the Liberals' ban on gas-powered cars while Brookfield is heavily invested in the EV supply chain. We know that he used offshore tax havens in the Caribbean to avoid paying Canadian taxes. His own department won't even say if he set up conflicts of interest screens. So instead of maligning people who've served the country in uniform, why doesn't he stand up and come clean about his conflicts of interest?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Prime Minister, sorry. Battlefield promotion there. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud as Prime Minister to have made the biggest investment in our military in decades. I am proud to be reversing the decades of cuts of members opposite.
Everyone's wondering about Carney's conflicts of interest, and Mike Barrett there has no better idea about these scams and scandals with the Liberal governments. We'll get a little more background on Barrett here from MP Andy Lawton. He's a rookie in the House of Commons, but he has good questions that we want answered as Canadians. Here we go.
As members of the House may be aware, in the previous Parliament, he served as the Shadow Minister for Ethics, which, with the previous government, was, I believe, 3.5 full-time jobs. Mr. Speaker, he was kept so busy with the litany of scandals and ethical lapses from Justin Trudeau and many of his cabinet ministers, and now we have a supposedly new government and a Prime Minister who won't even disclose potential conflicts of interest. So I'm just wondering if the honourable member is willing to take on what could be a repeat of the last Parliament in terms of the volume of ethical breaches that he will have to hold the government accountable for.
Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
He obviously was a keen observer of what went on over the last 10 years. And look, it was not an encouraging time for Canadians. It had the serial ethical law breaking that we saw with Justin Trudeau was an example that was set and unfortunately followed by other members of his cabinet. And hope springs eternal, and I'm very optimistic that we will see a change in tact from the new Prime Minister. And there is an opportunity. Now, there are unresolved issues, including the Prime Minister yet having declared to Canadians on a few important issues, including whether his investments were held in offshore tax havens, not paying his share of taxes for the important services that Canadians need. So there's still an opportunity for this Prime Minister to set a new tone. I remain very optimistic, but ready to do the hard work to hold them accountable either way.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Picking up on the idea of hope, I reflect, and Pierre Poilievre never did get the security clearance. And the security clearance is something that was actually brought up at the door, Mr. Speaker, as Canadians were concerned as to why it is the leader of the Conservative Party chose not to get the security clearance. It was a legitimate question before the election, during the election, and I believe it's a good question today. And I'm wondering if the member who is the quote-unquote ethics critic would maybe suggest to his leader that given that every other leader decided the merit of getting a security clearance, doesn't he not believe that maybe his leader should get the security clearance?
Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, in spite of some of that performance, I welcome my honourable colleague back to the House, and I know he knows it better than most. He spends an awful lot of time in the chamber, and he's here to serve his constituents as well. Look, it's important that the leader of the opposition is able to do his job, as past opposition leaders have said, that the framework that was set up by the Trudeau government was one that would have disadvantaged him in his ability to hold the government to account. And he has a constitutional obligation to do that. For our part, we're going to continue holding the government to account.
So it's very difficult to trust anyone in Ottawa. These days, I'm trusting the opposition a lot more than our federal government. How about you? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. Are we ever going to get to the bottom of where Canada is financially? I'm guessing it's way behind. We've got some bad news coming in the fall. I'd suspect. Anyhow, Aaron Canadian Looney, thanks for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one. Later, gang.